Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is a video on my embroidery temperature project that I did an earlier video on about where I'd got up to and what I was doing for it, so please go back and watch that if you're interested, and please subscribe to see more videos like this. So the project is one of the here it is. It's finished now. One of the kind of temperature projects that you see online a lot, where people either knit or crochet a temperature blanket or scarf or something along those lines. I always think they look really visually really attractive and appealing and interesting, but it's also like a really interesting idea. So you go back over the year, or you do it for the current year, and you take the temperature for each day, and every temperature is associated with a different colour, or probably a temperature range is associated with a different colour. So a hot temperature, which in the UK might be like 30 degrees Celsius, would be red. A medium temperature, which might be like 15, might be yellow, and then a cold temperature might be like, you know, below 0 Celsius would be like blue or something. But you'd have like a range of colours, and then for every day you would do probably a row on your blanket, and then it creates this really great like design where the colours will change, and usually in the northern hemisphere will be like the reds and oranges for summer, and then go into like your blues and maybe your greens in the winter months. Obviously you can use whatever colours you want, so you could do it all purples or greys or whatever, but I went with the kind of traditional red is hot, then go through the orange, yellow, green, and then into blue, and then grey was like my coldest colours, my coldest temperatures. Initially I was going to do it for 2024, but then I liked the idea of doing it for 2020, which is when my son was born, and actually doing it for his first year. So I started in August when he was born. I did August to September rather than January to December. So it's August 2020 to, not September, July. I forgot how many months there were in a year. To July 2021, that's how I did it. And that did make it a bit easier because I didn't have to keep up with it throughout the year, and it didn't take me a whole year to do. I also went for an embroidery project, not a knitting project, because me and knitting did not get along. I don't have the patience for it, and I think when you first start out as well, you're so slow and you make so many mistakes. Of course you do, but it just aggravates me so much. I feel like with sewing, when I make a mistake, I can correct it, whereas with knitting, when you like drop stitches, you just have big gaping holes in your project. That's quite annoying. Or if you have to go back and redo something, you kind of have to unpick all of your knitting to get back to where you dropped a stitch or made a mistake. With this, it was so much easier and so much quicker, and there was a couple that I did do wrong, like I did them in the wrong colour, and I only had to unpick that one like stitch and then redo it. I know it's a bit annoying, but like way easier than having to unpick rows and rows of knitting, obviously. So I finished it now, so it has all the embroidery on the front, and I've put his name in 2020. I finished it off really simply on the back. I looked online at what was the easiest way, and I just trimmed the excess and did a row of running stitches and just pulled them a little bit tight so that they are kind of kept at the back. Really simple. Obviously you could finish that off in a neater way by putting like another disc of fabric on the back, but it's going to go up on the wall, you're not going to see it, and I don't really care that much. When I was working out what I wanted to do, I roughly marked on, because I also needed to make sure that I did enough for every day of the month, and obviously different months have different number of days. So I did mark off like 28 or 30 or 31 different markings on each of the segments, and you can actually still see the pencil markings. Probably not on camera, but in person you can see the pencil. I don't know that I could really get rid of that in a way that wouldn't be really messy now. It will fade over time. I could try washing it, I could try rubbing it out with a rubber. I think it would just probably cause more problems. And again, you can't really see it unless you're looking close up, and it just doesn't really bother me. Like from afar, it just doesn't bother me. So I'm just going to leave it as is. One big problem was that I just eyeballed the outer circle, eyeballed the inner circle. That's fine. They're not perfect, obviously, but they're roughly fine. I eyeballed the segments, and I mean I say eyeballed, but I did use a ruler, but I didn't use a protractor or anything that worked out the angle. And so all the segments are different sizes, and some are like much smaller or much bigger. And so my biggest segment was actually ended up being February, which was the shortest month. And then a couple of these smaller ones were really like hard to fit all of the days in those months, which turned out to be like the longer months. And so it all ended up being a bit squished together and really quite small. And also when I got into the centre, because that's where the segment gets smaller, my stitches were really small, because by that point, because I started at the top left of each month, by that point I kind of just run out of space and I was just trying desperately to get them in. So that if I could go back and do something differently, the only thing I would do is I would make sure I measured those out more accurately. I don't mind it not being perfect. I kind of like that you know, it's a homemade project. It was never going to be perfect if I made it. I have a really annoying habit of rushing. I plan and plan and plan and think about a project. I've been thinking about doing this for years, and then when I actually do it, I rush. It's such an annoying combination of traits and habits. I'm just very impatient, but I also love to plan things. Anyway, if I could go back and do it again, I would measure these out more accurately, because that would have made my life easier. And some of them just have loads of like empty space around the stitches, or some of them have really big stitches and chains and things, and some it's really like squidged up. But apart from that, I'm really pleased with it. I used a few different stitches, I mean really basic stuff that I just did a quick Google online and saw how you do it. So I've got some just like running stitch, I've got chain stitch, I've got satin stitch, I've got like individual chains, I've got whatever these like flower things are that I can't remember what they're called, but you do like sort of a 5-pointed star, and then you like go like this, up and down, round and round. Really technical understanding, obviously. I have a very basic understanding of embroidery. I picked it because I saw one like this online, so I just like copied off something I saw online essentially. And then, like I said, I did a quick Google of some easy embroidery stitches, and I'm glad I did, because otherwise it would have all just been like running stitch and like really boring. And some of these, like the chains, which I remember doing when I was a child, that I learned how to do that and then forgot. And then these like flower things that also make it like more three-dimensional, which you completely will be able to see. Oh, maybe you can. That's my finger. I thought that was one of the stitches, it was just my finger sticking out. You won't be able to see that on camera, but they are like poking out, which just adds a bit of texture to it, a bit of more interest. Although it will be up on the wall, and I don't really want people like groping it, you know, because that's just going to mess it up. I really like, I like the colours that I went with. I did initially, so this is the first month I started with, which is August, and I did a little heart for my son's birthday. Apart from that, it doesn't make a difference what type of stitch I used. It wasn't symbolic of anything. It was just the colour that was representative of the temperatures. Initially, these were the hottest days of the year, of the whole year, and they were in brown. And I hadn't really used a true red colour, so this, like, there was like a sort of maroony red that I used for this day here, which was also one of the hot ones, and then this was in brown. And I did not like the brown, I didn't think it went, so I carried on working all the way round until I got closer to August. And then as I was coming into the summer months of like June and July, I had to make a decision as to whether to continue to use that brown, because I would need to, you know, have the colours for these months, or whether I should rejig the colours that I'd used. So I did, I changed 3 of the colours and redid all these like kind of maroony ones which had been brown, this true red one and this like dark orange one. And I like it a lot better. However, I do think that the greens and the blues, there's a lot more distinction between the different shades of green and blue, but the yellows and oranges are a lot closer, and I think, again, especially on camera, it'll be hard to tell. I'll obviously include some pictures as well, but there's like quite a lot of different colours. Like this is July, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different colours in this section. I think they do look quite similar when they're next to each other. I think in good day like I've got today, and when I'm looking at them I can see a difference. But I think when you're just glancing at them, especially these like oranges, because they're actually like different shades of orange there isn't that much distinction. I was working with the selection of threads that I bought very cheap supplies. I bought a cheap 25cm embroidery hoop from Amazon. I say cheap, you can probably these days get stuff so much cheaper than or better than Amazon, but it's just so easy, and I need to stop buying at Amazon because Jeff Bezos does not need more money. But it's just so convenient, but I need to like, it's so convenient, but actually, you know, it always used to be quite good for postage because you could usually get quite good postage or not pay postage, and these days I find like you always have to pay postage unless you're a Prime customer, which I guess makes sense because that's like the perk of being Prime. But I refuse to pay for Prime membership. I refuse to pay extra to like use whatever. Anyway, it's unrelated. I got a cheap embroidery hoop from Amazon. I got a cheap this fabric as well, which I've got quite a lot of now, because you can't, I couldn't get it in a smaller quantity. That's another thing with this stuff, is quite often I just want like a very small amount of something, and it's not really designed to give you small amounts. But I got a bag of threads, which are a bit of a mess now. They did come a little bit neater, but they're not going to be the highest quality. I can't remember how many different colours you got, but as you can see, it's quite a few that ended up in here, and it was not very much money. And so I worked with what I had, and it's quite a good range of colours, and I definitely had enough thread in every colour that I needed. Some I used obviously a bit more than others, but I didn't run out of any of them, which was good. Which I guess if you were doing like a knitting or crochet project, you'd need to think more carefully about how much of the wool that you bought, because you'd need to make sure that you had enough to not run out. But because this was going to use so much less thread, wasn't really that much of a problem. But yes, I was just working with what I had, rather than looking at all the thread colours that exist in the world and specifically choosing ones that were like really distinctive. So you know, that obviously had a bearing on the colours that I used. So yeah, that's the only thing as well, is that yeah, I wish the yellows and the oranges were a little bit more distinct from one another, and that perhaps I really wish that my like true red had been my hottest colour, but if I'd done that I didn't have enough colours between yellow and red for all the other temperatures. I got my historic temperatures online. Initially I used a website called W Underground, which had it all in Fahrenheit, and it had the historic temperatures for not my nearest weather station for some reason, although it did have current temperatures for my nearest one, but for one a little bit further away. And I thought, okay, well, it was hard to find the historic temperatures, I thought, so I'll just go with this. But then when I was going through the list, there were some really big gaps, especially like in January, I think. There was like a month where there was just like loads of gaps, so I had to go back and try and fill that data in anyway. And I found another website, which I think was called dateandtime.com, or maybe dateandtemp.com. I'll link it below. And this one was in Celsius, which I'm more used to using, but it did mean that I had to go back and rejig. Like I'd already worked all the temperature ranges out in Fahrenheit, and I had to go back and sort of convert to Celsius and like rejig everything. So they're not actually even temperature ranges. What I ended up with was some are 2 degrees and some are 3 degrees, but otherwise I would have had to use less colours, which I didn't want to do because I liked having such a good range, or more colours, which I couldn't really do because I didn't have enough in the yellow, red, blue, green categories. Yeah, that was in Celsius, and so that was fine. But and they also had my nearest weather station, so I decided to go back through and get all the data again for my nearest one, so it's actually more accurate to what temperature we were experiencing at the time when he was born in his first year, which I think is nicer as well. And that's the whole point of doing it for his first year, is like remembering that first year, all the joys of having a new baby during lockdown as well. Anyway, that's also another issue that's unrelated. Yeah, so that's how I did it. It was once I got going with it, it was actually a much quicker project than I thought it would be, which is good because I just don't have the attention span to commit to long-term projects. And so I was able to do like a month a night, kind of, and I was doing really like well with it. And then I started a jigsaw, and then that took over my life, obviously. So yeah, then there was a bit of a gap, but I did get it finished fairly quickly. I mean, we're only in sort of it's probably taken me like 2 or 3 weeks. I can't remember when I started. Not very long compared to those poor people that are knitting those giant blankets and having to do a row a day. Like, you know, they're the marathon runners, this was a sprint. But I'm actually surprised with how good it looks, and I really, really like it. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Please subscribe for more videos. Give me a like if you've liked the video, and you know, have a nice day.